The importance of voting. Level C. 1. Advance. Voting is one of the simplest actions a person can take and yet one of the most powerful. With a single mark on a ballot, we shape the direction of our countries, communities, and even the world. Still, millions of people around the globe choose not to vote, believing that one vote cannot make a difference. But in truth, every modern democracy stands on the collective belief that individual voices matter, and that participation is not just a right, but a responsibility. A brief history of the right to vote. The right to vote was not handed to people easily. It was earned through struggle, protest, and often bloodshed. In ancient Athens, only a small fraction of citizens, adult men born to Athenian parents, were allowed to vote. Centuries later, most monarchies and empires concentrated power in the hands of the few. The rise of democracy in the 18th and 19th centuries, particularly after the American and French revolutions, introduced the revolutionary idea that governments should rule with the consent of the governed. However, even in these early democracies, the right to vote was limited. Property owners, men, and certain ethnic groups often held exclusive control, while women, the poor, and minorities were excluded. The long fight for universal suffrage, the right for all adults to vote, became one of humanity's greatest movements for equality. From the suffragettes of the United Kingdom to the civil rights activists of the United States, each generation fought to expand the definition of the people, the power of the individual vote. One of the most common reasons people give for not voting is, "My vote doesn't matter." But history provides countless examples of elections decided by incredibly narrow margins. In 2000, the U.S. presidential election was determined by only 537 votes in Florida, a state with millions of voters. In 2010, an election in Iceland was decided by a single vote. Even small local elections, where only a few thousand people participate, can change policies on education, housing, and healthcare. Beyond the math, voting is a symbolic act, a declaration that your voice, values, and beliefs deserve representation. It's not just about who wins or loses, but about demonstrating that citizens are engaged, informed, and willing to hold their leaders accountable. Voting and identity. Voting is also deeply personal. It reflects who we are and what we stand for. When people vote, they don't just choose candidates. They choose the kind of society they want to live in. Some vote for progress, others for stability. Some vote to protect the environment, others to promote business or social order. Whatever the motivation, voting connects personal identity with collective destiny. In societies where people are free to vote, that freedom should never be taken for granted. For billions around the world, the right to participate in government remains out of reach. In some countries, citizens risk imprisonment or violence simply for expressing political opinions. To vote, then, is not just a civic act, it's a celebration of liberty itself. Why some people don't vote. Despite this, voter turnout in many democratic countries is declining. Why? Some feel alienated from politics, believing that all parties are the same or that corruption makes voting meaningless. Others lack information or feel their voices are drowned out by money and media influence. In fast-paced modern life, apathy often replaces activism. However, disengagement can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. When fewer people vote, the system increasingly represents only the most active and often the most extreme voices. This can distort democracy and lead to polarization, where compromise becomes impossible. In other words, when good people stop participating, bad ideas gain ground. Education and political awareness. One powerful way to encourage voting is through education. Studies consistently show that people who understand how political systems work, who the candidates are, what policies are being debated, and how decisions affect their lives are far more likely to vote. Schools that include civic education in their curriculum produce more active citizens. Likewise, Media literacy helps people recognize manipulation and misinformation, making them more confident voters. As technology evolves, so too does the process of voting. In some nations, digital ballots and online registration make participation easier than ever. Yet technology also introduces challenges, concerns about security, privacy, and digital inequality. Ensuring that every citizen can vote safely and fairly remains a core test for any democracy. Voting is not just about choosing leaders, it's about defining the values that will guide a nation's future. Every election is a conversation between the past and the present, between what society has been and what it aspires to become. When citizens cast their votes, they express not only their personal preferences, but also their hopes for justice, equality, and progress. Voting as a moral responsibility. To vote is to participate in a collective moral act. It is the moment when citizens decide what kind of world they want to build together. Choosing not to vote is, in a sense, surrendering that power to others, allowing them to make decisions on your behalf. While freedom includes the right not to participate, democracy depends on the belief that each voice counts, and that silence is not neutrality, but absence. The moral weight of voting becomes even clearer when we look at the sacrifices made by those who fought for this right. Women imprisoned for demanding suffrage. Civil rights activists beaten for marching to polling stations. People in authoritarian countries risking their lives to cast a ballot. Each of these acts reminds us that voting is not something ordinary, it is something sacred. The ripple effect of participation. Every vote contributes to a larger pattern. When voter turnout is high, governments become more representative and more responsive to the needs of all citizens. Politicians pay attention to the groups who vote and often ignore those who don't. This means that when young people, minorities, or the poor don't participate, their needs are less likely to appear in political agendas. Moreover, voting encourages a culture of engagement. A person who votes is more likely to follow political news, join community projects, or discuss social issues with others. This ripple effect strengthens the social fabric and builds a sense of shared responsibility. How voting shapes the future. Voting determines not just who leads, but also how they lead. It affects every area of public life, from healthcare and education to taxes, climate policies, and civil rights. The laws that shape our future are written by those we elect today. Choosing a candidate or a party is therefore an act of trust, but also of accountability. When voters pay attention, demand transparency, and stay informed, they push governments to act ethically. When they don't, corruption finds space to grow. In that sense, the health of democracy is measured not only by the freedom to vote, but by the quality of participation. The role of media in modern voting. In the 21st century, media plays a powerful role in shaping voter behavior. News, social media, and online campaigns influence how people perceive candidates and issues. While this can spread information faster than ever, it can also create echo chambers, spaces where people only hear opinions that match their own. That's why critical thinking and media literacy are essential to modern democracy. Being an informed voter today means questioning sources, checking facts, and understanding bias. It means looking beyond slogans and emotional appeals to find real policies and principles. The emotional side of democracy. Voting is not purely rational, it's emotional too. People vote not only with their minds but also with their hearts. Pride, fear, hope, and anger all play roles in how we choose. For some, voting is an act of protest. For others, it's an expression of faith in the system. This emotional connection gives democracy its strength and sometimes its volatility. When people feel their votes don't matter, democracy weakens. When they feel heard and respected, it grows stronger. That's why inclusion and dialogue are crucial. When all voices can be heard, even those of disagreement, the result is a healthier and more balanced society. Voting in the digital age. The future of voting is changing rapidly. Many countries are experimenting with online voting systems, biometric identification, and digital ballots. These innovations promise convenience, but also bring questions about cybersecurity and trust. Technology can make democracy more accessible or, if misused, more fragile. The challenge is to combine progress with protection. Democracy must evolve, but it must also remain human. It must preserve the connection between the citizen and the decision between the person and the power. The legacy of a single vote. One vote might seem small, but together they write history. Each election, no matter how local or global, leaves a trace that shapes the next generation. A person's decision today affects the schools their children will attend, the laws that will govern their society, and the freedoms they will inherit. In that sense, voting is not only about the present, it's about the future. It is an investment in the world we wish to leave behind. In conclusion, voting is both a right and a responsibility. It is an act of courage in uncertain times, a statement of belief in the power of collective choice. While no system is perfect, the act of voting reminds us that democracy is not something we have, it is something we do. When we vote, we choose to participate in history. We affirm that our opinions matter, that our communities matter, and that the future is worth shaping one vote at a time.